The Welsh Government wants Wales to be a nation of sanctuary for refugees. But does the Welsh public agree? Reform UK and the Tories want to scrap it. What do the other parties think? Welcome to Sharp End. Is there a warm welcome here in Wales for those fleeing conflict? Or are some turning their backs on the nation of sanctuary? As the UK formally recognises the state of Palestine, we'll be asking our panel if that's a solution to the conflict. And with another Labour heavyweight departing at May's election, who's left standing at the Senedd? Good evening to you. More than 120 million people across the world are currently displaced because of war, famine, political persecution or other similar factors. Many end up as refugees, and over recent years, hundreds of thousands have arrived on the shores of Britain. But this has prompted increased hostility towards them in many areas, including here in Wales, where several demonstrations were held over the summer against the arrival of asylum seekers. The Welsh Government is striving to make Wales a nation of sanctuary for those fleeing conflict, but our poll finds only limited support for that plan. They come from across the globe, often risking it all in search of safety and security. Last year saw a record 84,000 claims for asylum in the UK, and that record is set to be broken again in 2025. And with many of the applicants already in the UK, servicing their basic needs is putting pressure on the UK government. The decision to locate some of these asylum seekers in Wales has prompted opposition in many areas, including this protest in Mould.
I haven't got a racist bone in my body, I've got friends, black, white, and I'm not racist at all, but I think the country is full.
We are not against people moving in who are genuine refugees who come through the correct channels. We're against undocumented migrants and undocumented people, whether that be men, women, children. They shouldn't be in this country when, especially, they just come over here and they got treated the same. They got the same stuff, the same benefits, but they come over here, they get houses like this.
Placing individuals from the Afghan resettlement programme in a hotel in the Vale of Glamorgan has sparked weekly demonstrations. Opinion in nearby Barry was divided.
It's really got out of hand. I mean, yes, the wars, sometimes you're going to get an influx, but this is getting way, way, way out of hand. And we're only a small country.
I think if the government could process their claims more rapidly, everybody would be happier, including me. But on the other hand, we've got to be humans, and you've got to give people a roof over their head.
We've got our own housing crisis going on at the moment, and there's a lot, of people around in the area that are struggling. However, these people are here for a reason, and, we need to help them because who else is going to help them?
The Welsh Government has no control over immigration policy, but in 2019 it announced its plan for Wales to become the world's first nation of sanctuary. It aims to ensure refugees receive a welcome and supports them in rebuilding their lives and contributing to Welsh communities and the economy. But not everybody is in favour of this plan. We recently conducted a poll to find out what people across Wales thought about the Welsh Government's Nation of Sanctuary plan. About a third backed it, but almost half opposed the plan, and the rest were don't knows. The debate has raised concerns among current and former asylum seekers, including Noah, who fled the Syrian civil war 5 years ago.
In reality, migration is a blessing for any country. If you have the right management for migration, and sadly in the UK there's no any system for integration for asylum seeker, and most of these refugees and asylum seekers go through a hard time. If you ask asylum seeker, are you really happy about staying in a hotel, they would say, of course not. Most people want to integrate, most people want to live like a human being, interacting, working. Migration is a blessing if you have management for migration, but if you don't have any system, you will go into a lot of protests against migration, and I don't think that's doing us any good.
Those who work with refugees claim misinformation is hampering their efforts, but they insist that Wales must keep supporting those in need.
So we've seen a rise in anti-immigrant sentiment. We've also seen a rise in anti-immigrant sentiment linked to misinformation, and the two go hand in hand, really. So with the misinformation that we're seeing, we are seeing statements that are being made about the asylum system or why people are fleeing here that are just completely untrue. And the effect it has on our work and the people we support is that people are afraid to leave their temporary accommodation, people are afraid to integrate, and people are afraid to really make use of the services that can support them. It also makes it hard for our staff to be able to get on with their jobs, and it makes it hard for us to speak out about the type of asylum system that would be effective. And that's one of the clear messages that the public have spoken about, is that they want an asylum system that's effective and fair.
It is a controversial issue, and with emotions running high in many areas, can Wales still claim to be a nation of sanctuary? Well, that is the question I'll be asking our panel this evening. Labour's Julie Morgan, Plaid Cymru's Sioned Williams, the Conservative Tom Giffard, and Reform UK's Francesca O'Brien. Welcome, one and all. Sioned, if I can come to you first, Plaid Cymru in support of the nation of sanctuary. What's your reaction to the figures in the poll? Does it surprise you that just under half people surveyed were opposed to it?
It doesn't surprise me, but because I think, as was said in the report there, I think people are being led to believe that the nation of sanctuary policy is something that it isn't. It isn't about open borders. It isn't about increasing immigration. What it's about is about treating the people who come here under UK law, it's not devolved, or under international law, fairly with dignity, to help support them. And the vast majority of the funding that has been in the Nation of Sanctuary plan since 2019, over 80% of it has gone on the support for Ukrainian families fleeing war. We've got them, every single one of our communities. I'm sure we all know them. We know they needed support. They were fleeing a war, the trauma they had. They needed to help their children settle in school. They needed housing. They needed support to start businesses. I've been to see some of the businesses that have been started by them in my region. So it doesn't surprise me, because of the misinformation which has been deliberately disseminated by some parties about what Nation of Sanctuary really is.
And you're right, absolutely. The ethos behind it is to welcome those who arrive in the UK, help them to settle, help them to integrate. It does help with educational opportunities and employment opportunities, Julie Morgan. And immigration isn't a devolved issue. From the responses you've seen in that report, can Wales still be a nation of sanctuary? Is it still a nation of sanctuary?
Oh, I think it's absolutely crucial that Wales remains a nation of sanctuary and works further to develop being a nation of sanctuary. Because, as you say, we don't actually control who comes here, but what we can do is to make sure that they get a warm welcome, to make them they feel part of the country, and that's to our benefit and to our children's benefit. And people have got so much to offer when they come here, and I think we should be looking at what people can offer, making our utmost to help them integrate. And I think not to do that would be a dereliction of duty.
Tom, your party wants to scrap the nation of sanctuary, a dereliction of duty.
Well, I think what people in Wales really want to see from the Welsh Government is the Welsh Government spending its money on the priorities that it's responsible for. We've got the worst NHS waiting lists anywhere in the UK, the worst educational outcomes, and the weakest economy anywhere in the UK. And frankly, the Welsh public, as we saw in your poll, want to see that money not being spent on a nation of sanctuary that could potentially act as a pull factor to encourage more illegal immigrants to come into the country. What they want to see is the Welsh Government getting the fundamentals right in the first place.
I'd like to know, we hear Tory and Reform politicians say that this is a pull factor. Can you tell me what evidence you have for that?
Well, it absolutely is a pull factor. I think what you saw in your clip there was people feeling as though the immigrants are being treated somehow differently to people that live here.
I'm asking if you have an evidence that it's a pull factor for people who come. Do you have evidence? No, you don't have any evidence.
Do you have evidence that it's not?
Well, because
you don't.
You don't prove something isn't the case. You prove something is the case,
but if we spent £60 million on something, I would want to know if it's,
I'd like to know, do you know, I remember you
And it's
saying
not
in a
effective.
debate, Tom, it was about St David's Day, I think, and you said about, you were talking about Ukraine, and you said about the nature of Wales and what kind of Wales we have, and you said we're a nation of empathy, and we've shown that for the Ukrainians. So would you object? Do you now say we shouldn't have spent the vast majority of that money on that nation sanctuary plan to welcome those Ukrainians? I'd like to know. That's a yes or no answer.
I think most people in Wales absolutely empathise with what Ukrainian refugees have been through.
But we don't want to support them in any way. We don't want to give them
people,
housing.
People in Wales welcomed them into their homes.
OK, let me bring in Francesca here from Reform UK. You're in agreement with the Welsh Conservatives here that Reform UK have openly said, Nigel Farage has said on many occasions he wants to say goodbye to the nation of sanctuary. But if we take it down to things like providing basic health care for those that are living in Wales, that's a basic human right, isn't it?
It is a basic human right, and that should be prioritised for the Welsh people, for the British people. We can still be a welcoming country to those that you mentioned, like it from Ukraine. We don't have to be a nation of sanctuary. Scotland approved it, England approved it. In Scotland, they've had 30,000 Ukrainians. In England, they've had 130, and they've done it without being a nation of sanctuary.
Is that not the same thing, though, welcoming people?
No, you don't know, because that is actively promoting. We are saying you haven't actually said, I've read through your policies, it sounds great, but actually it's the taxpayer who's fronting the burden on it. Why should people in Wales front the cost to have an open border policy? I haven't seen what's the numbers going to be and what's the budget going to be.
We've seen
It's
about what is on offer to welcome people in Wales.
It's cost 55 million. What is it going to cost?
45 million, which is spent on Ukraine.
But 55 million in total. But Welsh people want to know where it's going to be spent, and they have the right to know.
Now, it will not surprise any of you that this issue came up in First Minister's questions today, earlier on. And it did get a little heated there as well. Let's take a look.
Your Nation of Sanctuary plan, which is supported, of course, by Plaid Cymru, is funding support and services, including for illegal immigrants. That's tens of millions of pounds that could and should be spent on people in Wales and our public services.
You were in the front line of people telling us we had to hold out our hands and help the people of Ukraine. You were the first person there. That's where the Nation of Sanctuary money is going. You cannot change your mind because we've got an election coming up and you find reform breathing down your neck. You don't really believe this stuff, Darren.
Do you really believe this stuff, Tom?
Absolutely. And look, I think people of Wales believe this stuff as well. I think most people in Wales are where we are on this, which is they don't want to see illegal immigrants come into this country. They want them deported. They want foreign criminals deported. And that is why we introduced our deportations bill.
You're talking about illegal immigrants there, but the Nation of Sanctuary is talking about asylum seekers.
Yes.
Yeah, but the point I'm trying to make is that we introduced a bill earlier this year in Westminster to deport illegal immigrants and foreign criminals. I think the public expect that. The public spoke to
It's very different to objecting to a Nation of Sanctuary welcoming asylum seekers, wouldn't you say?
It's absolutely not. But what I'm trying to get at is, we need a party that is serious about dealing with the problems that immigration causes. And if the Nation of Sanctuary is part of it, then it absolutely needs to be part of that discussion. Okay. So that's why we introduced that bill, and that's why we're really serious about getting it done.
Julie, we had Noah in the report, a refugee himself, talking about migration being a positive thing, but acknowledging that the system is broken. People are waiting far too long. And is that not what the problem is here more, that the system needs changing?
Well, I think it is a concern that asylum seekers are not able to work, for example, and obviously don't have much money to live on. And I think the whole system is being looked at by the UK government, and there have been improvements already in terms of the times of determining asylum seekers' claims, because that's a scandal, the amount of time that it takes to determine an asylum seeker's claim. That has been halved, so that is a big progress forward. Less hotels are now being used than at the height of the Tory period.
Would you accept those figures haven't come down as quickly as they should have done under Labour's promises?
Not as quickly as they should, because hotels are not suitable places for people, to live. I just feel that a Nation of Sanctuary is welcoming it's the dispersal scheme that is carried out by the Home Office for people who applied for asylum, who haven't yet got refugee status, but obviously it includes welcoming people who have refugee status. And that poll it's a very blunt question. If you have a more nuanced poll, I think you would get a different answer. If you said, do you want more doctors and nurses to come into Wales?
I think more people will be opposed to it, actually. I think people don't...
Do we not need doctors and nurses?
We need doctors and nurses, absolutely. But let's look at the migration system. A lot of those from the data that we've seen, more than half are not working. They're not the doctors, they're not the business entrepreneurs, they're not those. Half of them go on not to work. And going back to that poll, I think if more people actually knew about the nation of sanctuary, they would be in disagreement.
Let's just remember asylum seekers aren't allowed to work.
They're not allowed to work, asylum seekers, but what I think is very important is the questions you ask. And I have got great confidence in the Welsh public, and I believe that the response to that poll is a blunt question that can be nuanced.
I would just also say that several people in that, or the rest of those didn't know, so maybe there should be more awareness, would you accept, around the nation of sanctuary?
And I do feel that we should listen to the poll and take note of it. It's very important because it's so important that we communicate with people. And when people have contact with people, you know, with asylum seekers, their views change completely because many people will not even have had any contact with asylum seekers. But what about the views of the Welsh public?
Francesca, we were elected to serve them and they want to scrap it.
Francesca and Tom, the views of the Welsh public, we saw some people demonstrating in those reports. Whatever the opinions are around this table, whatever anyone's opinions are, arguably, should we be seeing scenes like that protesting outside asylum seeker hotels? Should we be seeing that?
Well, I think that's people's freedom. We have the right to freedom of speech and people should rightly protest in a safely and peaceful manner. I don't have any objections to that. People are sick and tired of politicians not listening to them. People want to be put first. People in Wales, people in Great Britain, they want to be heard. And that is a clear sign. And that is what's going to be happening at next May's election. You know, Plaid propped up by Labour, if you're re-elected, you know, you're going to be promoting that, actively promoting and advertising it. And let's not forget all the hidden costs. So 55 million, and that's what we've heard of. What are all the hidden costs to the NHS, education, housing? And that is where you've got people demonstrating on the streets.
Talking about the demonstrations, I think it's so important that you people who do demonstrate, and I support the right to demonstrate, peaceful protests, you need to be very sensitive about it because inside some of the hotels are children who are frightened to death by what's going on. There are people in communities in Cardiff who are afraid to go out because they are people who, you know, have been here in many cases for many years. And so I think what you're doing,
over 2 billion per year.
is fragmenting society.
No, actually, we've given them a voice. We're not fragmenting anything. We are speaking up for the public, costing over 2 billion a year.
I think that there's a particular irony, Andrea, if I can be honest, about the Reform representative on the panel today who's come on the programme saying that the Welsh public are being ignored when she was elected as a Conservative councillor just a few years ago and 2 months ago defected to Reform UK and decided not to call a by-election.
Well, you can address that to Francesca directly.
And there's a sincerity question, I think, about reform generally here. Because we, you know, I understand...
But you are agreeing with reform.
But I understand
here.
why
You're
people like Nigel Farage and they like the things that they say. But some of the candidates that will be standing for them aren't as sincere about the things that they're saying as Nigel Farage himself might be. Francesca herself, for example, I've got the quote here in my pocket, sent a text to Conservative members saying that it was a difficult decision for her to join Reform, but, quote, I've realised it's time for me to be a little bit selfish.
Yeah.
I'm standing in this election to stand up for ordinary working people, putting money in their back pockets. But some of their candidates are interested in putting money in their own back pockets.
You're late coming to the party. The Welsh Conservatives are late coming to the party.
That you were a member of 2 months ago.
Scrapping the nation of sanctuary. No, sorry, Tom, you're diverting. This topic is about immigrants and not about my personal circumstances.
It is about you.
No, it's
you're
not.
You're the Reform UK representative on here. It is
Tom,
about you.
That's quite embarrassing. No, that's quite embarrassing. You're late to the party and we're ahead of the game.
And let's bring it back straight to reform and the topic we're talking about this evening now. Your party has also now talked about deporting legal migrants who are settled in the UK. It's had a big backlash. I don't think that's unfair to say. Opposition parties have accused you of potentially splitting up families, getting rid of plenty of skilled workers from this country. What's your reaction to that?
Obviously, information came out yesterday, so it is recorded that between 2026 and 2030, under the Boris government administration, approximately 800,000 are going to be given the immediate leave to be here. And that is going to be costing over that lifetime over 230 billion. That is to the taxpayer. You know, it's ballooning. The welfare system is ballooning. Yes,
that needs people who work in social care. Do you know if you deported those migrants, the economic damage that you would wreak on this country?
Half
when in
of them are not working.
That
is the data we've had.
Would you let me speak, Andrea? Perhaps I could address this question. 1 in 5 workers in the UK are migrant workers. 30% of our NHS workforce are migrant workers. How on earth would we cope if those people were deported? And you're talking here, we've talked about, we need to spend money on housing, NHS, absolutely. But what we need to do
is going to be a big issue, isn't it, at the next Senedd election? So is it going to be, we're listening to what we're listening to on the panel today, listening to what we've heard in the reports, listening to the rise in this divisive language. Is this going to be a problem for Plaid, for Labour at the Senedd election, this issue?
I don't think it's going to be a problem, no, because what we'll be saying is that we're not going to be pointing at immigration and saying this is the reason for 14 years of Tory austerity, which has starved our public services, which has given us housing shortages, which has made decimated our NHS. That's where we need to be spending the money, and we're not just blaming other people for that. So we need to see investment in those services.
Just a reminder, we all know, but a reminder, this is a devolved issue. Is it right that this should have such a focus in the Senedd election?
Absolutely, it impacts everybody. Welsh people pay taxes, they have a voice, and it is going to be at the next election, and it's a clear choice here. If you vote for Plaid, you're going to be voting for Labour, and you're going to be keeping the nation of sanctuary.
Tom, last word?
No, we'd absolutely scrap the nation of sanctuary and focus on Welsh people first and their priorities, which is sorting out the NHS, sorting out our economy, sorting out our education system.
Yes, and you're not going to do that if you're going to deport the people who are working in those services.
We will be promoting the nation of sanctuary, and we will not be trying to divide society. We want to have a united society in Wales where everyone has a role, where we can work together and everyone can prosper. And I think that, that's what Labour wants to do, and we do want to listen to people. So, we do want to hear what people have got to say, those people who spoke in that poll. So we do want to reach out.
And a chance tonight for everybody to hear what everybody has got to say, to have that communication, hopefully this evening.
We do that.
Julie, thank you. After the break, another subject likely to divide opinion amongst the panel, the UK government's decision to recognise the state of Palestine. See you in a bit. Welcome back to you. Over the weekend, the Prime Minister announced that the UK, along with several allies, would recognise the state of Palestine. It comes as the war in Gaza nears its third year. For many, it's long overdue, but there are concerns it will embolden Hamas, which the UK government still considers a terrorist organisation. Well, let's find out what our panel think of that decision. Tom, I'll come to you first. Has Keir Starmer done the right thing?
Well, as you said in your introduction there, Hamas is a terrorist organisation. Now, look, people will be touched by what is happening in Israel and in Gaza at the moment. It's an incredibly complex and difficult situation, but we mustn't forget that Hamas is a terrorist organisation. And what Keir Starmer has done this week by choosing to recognise the state of Palestine, who are ruled by Hamas, a terrorist organisation, is legitimise exactly the barbarity and the violence and the murder that we have seen. And unfortunately, that will only embolden Hamas and other organisations like it across the world to do exactly the same thing.
Julie, is it a case that it's a propaganda win for this terrorist organisation?
No, I think it's a recognition of the awful situation that there is in Palestine. And I think it's very good that the Prime Minister has done this, along with so many other states, because the situation is so intolerable that I think the very least that can be done is this recognition, and that this will give a signal that a two-state solution is something that we will eventually reach.
And he said it is to give that hope for a two-state solution. But Sioned, with the situation that we're in, is it really a viable prospect?
Well, it is a very complex situation, and because we've seen since the establishment by the UN, that vote in 1947 that established the homeland for Israel, we've seen constant violations then of that agreement, obviously. And I think it's a belated response to what's been happening in Gaza. I welcome the recognition. We belong Plaid Cymru have long called for the recognition of the Palestinian state. But I also think that it has demonstrated, Keir Starmer's demonstrated political cowardice on this, and we would like him to go further. The illegal and inhumane actions of Israel in Gaza, I think there should be sanctions against Israel, so that we should go further, make sure there's a full arms embargo to get that ceasefire, to make sure that the killing stops and we get this hostages home.
Francesca, a good move by Keir Starmer, or has he not gone far enough? Where do reform
absolutely not. No, reform have made it quite clear. We do not agree. We are nowhere near a two-state solution. You've only got to look at the footage there. There is no way towards peace at the moment. Do I agree should have happened later down the line? Absolutely. But now all we've done is reward Hamas, which is an organised terror group.
What is the answer then? If the two-state solution isn't the answer, what would you do in this situation?
Well, I certainly wouldn't have awarded an organised terrorist group. Absolutely not. You only heard them yesterday is calling it a victory. That this is no good, and unfortunately we're terribly disappointed in this. Could have gone further down the line, absolutely, but at the moment, like I say, you've only got to look at that footage, we're nowhere near a peace deal.
Julie Morgan, are we nowhere near this? Is this just lip service? Are these just semantics?
Well, I think we've all been wringing our hands about what we've seen on the television, those absolutely terrible scenes in Gaza, which break our hearts, and we are all saying how dreadful it is. So I think we have to do something. And this,
but will it do something?
Is a step towards, I hope, an eventual solution.
Tom, would you acknowledge that whatever the solution is, wherever we get to on this, which, as we've all acknowledged, is an incredibly complex situation, both sides need to be held accountable for atrocities? There's atrocities on both sides, and both sides need to be held accountable.
Yeah, look, it's really difficult. Any war is a really complex and difficult situation. There's a role here, though, for the Welsh Government as well, I think. And Julie's right. We need to pull on every lever that we've got to bring an end to the conflict we're seeing here in the Middle East. Now, last week, we know, don't we, that ultimately the peace broker is likely to be the United States, if any peace is to come. Last week, the First Minister was invited to the state banquet to meet the President of the United States and the US delegation to make that case and to stand up for other things that matter to the people of Wales. She chose to decline that and not be in the room to have that conversation. So there is a responsibility on Welsh Government, even though this is not the
realistically, would she have had an opportunity to make a difference on that issue in that situation?
Absolutely. You're in the room with the President of the United States and his delegation. If you're not using that opportunity to stand up for the things that matter to the people of Wales, then you're missing that opportunity.
So, we saw today that President Trump doesn't listen to the UN. I don't think he would have listened to Sioned Morgan, although I do think that the Welsh Government, as we've seen John Swinney in Scotland and as we've seen the executive in Northern Ireland, speak out more about the situation in Gaza, and Plaid Cymru have been pushing the Welsh Government to do that. And I think we have to make sure the UN have said that we are witnessing genocide. The ICJs have said that there's probable genocide. We have to make sure that Wales is not complicit in that genocide.
The concern around this is whether a two-state solution can work or not is that, on that side, there's such a power imbalance at the moment, potentially, that would it work in practice anyway, Julie?
Well, it would be difficult to get a two-state solution because of the way that the land is made up now. I mean, I went to Gaza just after Hamas took over, and I have, such memories of the children I saw there, the place I saw there, which now is in ruins on the screen. And I really feel that it will be possible to get a two-state solution, but it won't be the states as we know it, because it'll take a long, long time to dismantle or move some of the settlements that are there.
Yeah.
And so
the illegal settlements.
So why have we honoured them, that statehood, when we haven't even got the geographical boundaries? You've jumped the gun on this one, and I think that's...
I think this is something we can move towards, and it will, as I say...
There's no evidence of
that. It will be different states
Julie,
than we know.
Saying it's a start, you're saying we've jumped the gun. Our time's up on this. We've got to return to home politics for a minute, so we'll get back to you in a moment. Our poll last week suggested the Welsh Liberal Democrats could face a disappointing Senedd election next year, but at the party's conference in Bournemouth, they were adamant they can prove the poll wrong, just as they did in last year's UK general election. But there's tension too, with the UK and Welsh leaders acknowledging that their relationship hasn't yet healed. Our political editor, Adrian Masters, has been to the seaside.
The Liberal Democrats came to Bournemouth looking to the future. They're marching ahead, according to Ed Davey. After all, he now leads a much larger group of MPs in Westminster. But it's not clear if the party's hitting the right notes in Wales. There's only one Welsh MP and one Senedd member, the party's Welsh leader, Jane Dodds. In her speech, she said,
Conference, I'm proud to lead a party that's ambitious for Wales and which believes our best days still lie ahead.
But are the best days ahead for the Welsh Lib Dems? Our poll last week showed that they could win only 6% of the vote next year, maybe only 3 out of the 96 seats available.
Polls are, never accurate, and they're not going to be accurate in this new system. We've got a totally new voting system. Nobody's ever done a poll and delivered in this new voting system, so we don't know. But the other two bits for us are that the polls thought that last year we'd only have 30 members of parliament. We got 72. And the polls don't think about those amazing community people who are standing for the Welsh Liberal Democrats. They don't take account of the fact that they are so well known in their local communities.
So how many seats do you think that you can win?
Oh, everybody's going to ask me that, and I'm not going to predict that. What I'm going to say is that we want seats in every corner of Wales. And because
so more than 3?
Because of the optimistic message, the change message that we're delivering, we're getting a really good result on the doorstep.
A new voting system should make next year's Senedd election the Lib Dems' best chance for a decade. But it could also see them squeezed out by other parties, and that could knock them back for another decade. An uphill struggle then, but Welsh Liberal Democrats are nothing if not optimistic.
The electoral system is either for or against. This is very difficult to tell at this stage, but certainly we are optimistic we're going to have a bigger group. And I think where we're actually fighting on the ground, you look at the by-elections that's taken place around Wales, the Welsh Liberal Democrat vote is significantly up, much higher than the opinion polls.
The world is polarising at the moment, and obviously Reform are getting some of that support, but obviously there are people that want a more decent approach, a more open approach, a more all-embracing approach, and somebody that will stand up against the letdowns we've had from Conservatives and Labour, and the Liberal Democrats are ably poised to fill that breach.
There's another problem. You can see Jane Dodds here chatting to a former UK leader, but relations with the current leader are distant. He publicly urged her to consider resigning over a critical child protection report from a previous job that she's repeatedly apologised for. But there is a bit of conflict, isn't there, between the two leaders? Is that causing a problem?
No. I wouldn't say there's conflict. The issue has been drawn a line under, and we're moving ahead. Jane's just been given a great speech opening our conference, and that shows that everybody in the party is committed to a better result next year. Wales really matters to Liberals. We've had the only Welsh Prime Minister, and hopefully we'll be electing a bigger Senedd group next year.
The UK leader has no power to force Welsh Lib Dems to do anything. So when I met him, I asked Ed Davey how relations were with Jane Dodds.
I haven't spoken for a little while, I'll be frank with you. I've made my comments about the fact that I think she needed to apologise. She's apologised, and that's good, and it seems like she will be leading us into the Senedd elections next May.
Is she the right person to lead the Welsh Liberal Democrats?
Well, the Welsh Liberal Democrats have made that really clear. They support her, and I support the Welsh Liberal Democrats.
But you don't quite support her, that's what I'm getting from your answers.
Well, I've made my position clear that I think that she should apologise. She has apologised, and I welcome that.
The reason that we're focusing so much on personal relationships is because divided parties don't win, do they? And doesn't that show that you are a divided party?
No, I think if you look at Welsh Liberal Democrats, they've really got their tails up, and in a very united way. The success we had with David Chadwick winning Brecon, Radnorshire and Cwmtai was really, really encouraging. And when I look at the support we're giving to the campaigns across Wales, I think people will be surprised by how well we do.
I will ask you about that, but before I move on, it sounds like you're distancing yourself from the Welsh Liberal Democrats' decision, from Jane Dodds.
No, listen, I think Jane Dodds has served her community incredibly well over the years, and she will stand for election and no doubt do that again.
Have you spoken?
I haven't spoken to Jane for a while. We've actually text messaged each other.
You mentioned the Senedd election. Our poll this week showed you on about 6%, which would translate into about 3 out of the 96 available seats. You disappointed by that?
Well, the campaign hasn't really begun proper, and we will be campaigning across Wales. We think in places like Mid Wales, where we've traditionally been strong, we can really do well. But we've been well in Cardiff and Swansea. We've been doing well in places like Ceredigion, where we used to be strong. I think we can come back there. We've been really encouraged by the canvassing that we've been doing. It is early days. It's not been reflected in the polls yet, but I think it will when we get to polling day.
Is part of the problem that you are seen as a party of England, not a party of Wales?
Well, I think everyone knows that Liberals have been strong over many years in Wales.
Recently.
Not so recently, but we can come back to our previous strength. And I'm really cheered by what David Chadwick has been doing. He's really been a big voice for Wales.
He's the only MP you've got from Wales. Jane Dodds is the only Senedd member. You've seen, I can see the large group of MPs you've got here from England. Looks like two parties.
No, we're growing. No, David Chadwick and I get on incredibly well, and I'm really proud of what he's doing. I think our voice in Wales is growing, and I think you will be surprised by how well we do in the Senedd elections. You know, before the last general election, people said we weren't going to win a seat in Wales. Before the last election, they wrote us off. Well, we got our best result for 100 years, and we are back in Wales.
Are there any parties that you would say the Welsh Liberal Democrats should not work with in a coalition after the election in May?
Well, I can't speak for the Welsh Liberal Democrats, but I'd be very, very surprised if they wanted to work with Reform.
Jane Dodds has ruled out.
I'm not surprised.
Reform. Any of the other parties, would you be comfortable with working with Labour, Plaid Cymru?
The thing about devolution, which Liberal Democrats support, is the leader for the federal party in Westminster doesn't tell the Welsh leader what to do, and I'm not going to do that. Welsh Liberal Democrats will make their own decisions as they have been doing.
Sir Davey, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And away from Bournemouth, Adrian will be back after the break when we'll also be discussing whether we should be worried about a lack of experience in the next Senedd. See you in a bit. Hello, welcome back. Now, he was a monumental figure in Welsh politics, a long-time stalwart of Plaid Cymru, who also served in a Labour government and was one of the architects of devolution. Now, a new book details the extraordinary life of Dafydd Ellis Thomas. Adrian recently sat down for a chat with its author.
Well, he did have a remarkable ability of to get on with people from all parties, and I think that was partly to do with the fact that he'd worked as an MP for 18 years. So in order for anything to be done from his point of view, he had to get on with other parties, especially Labour.
People also called him mercurial because he seemed to change his position quite often. What do you think? Not only from what you know of him, but having researched his life now in such detail.
Yeah, well, I think if Dafydd was here today, he'd say that he was the one who was consistent. It was just other people who changed their minds. He could change his mind, and sometimes you struggle to quite understand why. But he always had a purpose behind it, and he always had a very strategic view of what his politics was about, which was to bring about devolution, bring about a Senedd.
But it's also true that people within Plaid Cymru and within the nationalist movement, wider movement, sometimes felt betrayed by him.
Oh, absolutely.
And expressed that, didn't they?
And what people found very difficult to deal with was that Dafydd believed that in order to develop Plaid and develop the national movement, not nationalism, but the national movement, was that it needed to extend its appeal. So in order to extend its appeal, he believed that it had to get away from just being a nationalist party based in North West Wales, emphasising language and culture, you know, the roots of Plaid Cymru. And it had to work with other parties, it had to work with other movements.
Dafydd Ellis Thomas was very involved in those, for want of a better word, shenanigans at the beginning of it. It seemed very turbulent. The resignation of Alan Michael. What did you discover about that?
Well, I think what is interesting is how close devolution came to failing in the first 2 years, and how critical people, not only like Dafydd Ellis Thomas, but also Roger Morgan, were in ensuring that devolution stuck. And they did that even though other people outside of the Assembly were very, very opposed to it and didn't want it to succeed.
And do you think he'd be quite worried now that people are questioning devolution again?
I don't think he'd be worried. I think he'd welcome the discussion and debate, but I think he would say that the Senedd is here for keeps. It's a matter of running the Senedd properly and having a Welsh government that is accountable.
One of the last times I spoke to him was when he wanted to rejoin Plaid Cymru, and then he was effectively blocked. Was he serious about rejoining?
Oh, totally, yes, and very disappointed that he wasn't sort of allowed to do so. And I think from Plaid Cymru's point of view, I think it was shabby in the way they dealt with it and disappointing for Dafydd. But after Plaid essentially turned him down, he just sort of gave that up and went back to his days of retirement, really.
How do you judge Dafydd Ellis-Thomas's life and career as a politician and a statesman first?
I think one of the most effective politicians of the last 50 years in Wales, certainly. I think you could say that but for him, the Assembly might not have succeeded in continuing in the first years of devolution. He was also the guy, more than anybody else, who was responsible for having the Senedd building created, in spite of great opposition from a lot of Assembly members. And I think he would consider that his real success was to bring devolution home, as it were, to Wales and to establish it with its institutions.
Aled Eirig, great memories, interesting book. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really interesting to be reminded of his myriad of achievements. Sioned, the word there used was he was treated in a shabby way, with that readmission being denied to the party. What would you say to that?
Well, the party has processes for membership, as every single party does, and there can be no exceptions to that. Although he was an exceptional man, obviously. So it isn't true that he was refused membership, but he didn't want to engage with the process that would have allowed him to his application for membership to be reconsidered. Okay. But I mean, obviously we saw the outpouring of grief from Plaid Cymru members because of the contribution that he'd made over the years to the movement, and obviously as one of the architects of devolution, that's how he will always be remembered.
Other side of the coin on that.
But obviously a complex figure.
Yes, yeah, indeed. Well, Dafydd Ellis-Thomas played a key part in shaping the current Senedd, but the next Senedd is going to look very different. We know 36 new MSs are coming in, but a lot of the old guards are leaving too. And Health Secretary Jeremy Miles, the latest one to announce he won't be standing in May, just this week. Julie, were you surprised by that?
Yes, I didn't. I had no inside knowledge, so yes, I was surprised, but absolutely respect his reasons for going. And I think he's made a great contribution.
It's such a key figure, not that long ago in line to be the First Minister, potentially.
Yes. And I think he's made an impact as Health Minister as well. And of course, he has been, the first openly gay man to stand for the leadership of Welsh Labour and to be First Minister. And I think that's great because it gives, it gives such a good message to people, young people in the community. So I think Jeremy's achieved a lot.
Does this leave us, Tom, with, not just Jeremy, but we've just run through the numbers that we won't see standing. Does this leave us with a lack of experience? Does that concern you for the next Senedd?
Well, look, the Labour group, half their members now have announced that they're standing down. And, it is like them leaving a sinking ship, quite frankly. Look, we don't know what the outcome of the next election is going to be and the composition of the next government. I know, speaking as a Welsh Conservative, that we've got a really experienced team. We know the direction we're going in. We've got the policies that we know that are going to fix Wales. There are other parties that, frankly, haven't got policies on a range of issues. And most notably that reform is
OK,
that
well,
party.
Let's bring reform in. Reform likely to be there, according to the polls, but not experienced, and particularly not experienced in Wales.
Well, regardless, we shouldn't be having 36 more politicians costing over 100 million first and foremost, again, a burden to the taxpayer. But no, reform are very confident. We're going through the Senedd selections at the moment. We're going right across the breadth of Wales to make sure that we've got quality candidates tapping into all sorts to bring a new skill set to the table. people, and I think that we've got a fantastic opportunity ahead of me, and we just hope that, you know, if we get elected, unfortunately, if you vote for Plaid, you will get Labour and you'll have the same 26 years you've had previously.
But are you going to be ready as a party? At the moment, you know, there's no leader in Wales for reform.
That's not a priority for us at the moment. Our priority is, well, not to have a leader in Wales. I think we are delivering on the people's priorities. We're taking what their views to heart. That's why we're coming up with the policies, and we're determined that we're going to, as we have done, make good strides for May next year.
But how can Wales be so unimportant to you? That you
It's
don't
not
have a
unimportant. Absolutely not.
People don't know what they're voting for. They won't know who the candidate is.
No, I mean, well, they know if they vote for Plaid, they're getting Labour, and the track record is not great. So,
is Wales just a path to Westminster for reform?
No, absolutely not. No, we're committed to Wales. It's very much the heart, and that's why we're putting the taxpayer first.
Sioned, from Plaid Cymru's point of view, you know, people are going to have to be working with other parties in this new Senedd as well. Does it concern you that there's going to be this lack of experience in the Senedd, and is it workable for Plaid Cymru with a lack of government experience as well?
I don't think we should look at it in that way. We've got an exciting opportunity now with the expansion of the Senedd and the way the polls are looking for Plaid Cymru as well. I think that, you know, we're hoping to, although we're not taking anything for granted, obviously, we're hoping that we will be able to have be in government in some shape or form, hopefully leading that government, and we will work with other progressive parties in the way that PR really dictates, and that's what happens across the majority of mature Western democracies, where people come together on policies that they agree on and find a way to govern.
Concern and a risk, isn't there, that, you know, you could turn the clock back to 1999, where people were learning that the ropes and how government works, and we could descend into chaos, couldn't we?
No. Oh, absolutely not. I mean, the reason so many Labour politicians are going is because it's a generational move, because so many have been there so long. That's why people are going, and it's good.
Some of the ones that are standing down have only just arrived.
And I think the polls, obviously, I mean, I stand...
Just as you're getting going on this one, I'm going to have to cut you short, because it is Julie time
but it's very
to say
exciting
good night.
Moving forward.
It is exciting moving forward. We're going to have to say good night. Goodbye from all of us. Good night.